In the 8th century BC, ancient Greece was at a historical turning point from decline to revival. After the decline of the Mycenaean civilization, Greece entered a dark age that lasted for hundreds of years. During this period, ancient Greek society experienced severe destruction and chaos, and the agricultural, cultural, and political systems almost stagnated. However, as time went on, Greek cities gradually rose from the ruins and formed a new social structure. At the core of this process was the birth of the Greek city-state. In the 12th century BC, the collapse of the Mycenaean civilization marked the beginning of the Dark Ages in Greek history. Major cities in ancient Greece, such as Mycenae, Thebes, and Troy, suffered devastating blows during this period. Wars, civil strife, and foreign invasions almost plunged the entire Greece into chaos. The use of writing was abandoned, cultural progress stagnated, and the economy fell into extreme decline. However, this period of lows in history was not without hope. Around the 8th century BC, with the popularization of iron tools and the recovery of agricultural production, Greek society began to gradually recover. The Greek people gradually rebuilt their cities and culture, and a new social structure gradually took shape in the process. During this period, Greece began to gradually transition from a tribal society to a more complex and diversified urban society. Villages and small settlements merged into larger cities, and the connections and interactions between cities gradually increased, laying the foundation for the formation of city-states. The birth of the Greek city-state was not simply a geographical expansion or population gathering, but a completely new form of political and social organization. A city-state is a political unit consisting of one or more cities and the surrounding agricultural areas. Each city-state has its own government, laws, religious sacrifices, and military organizations, and has a high degree of autonomy. The birth of the Greek city-state has its own unique background. First, with the growth of population and the revival of commercial activities, Greek cities began to develop more complex economic and social structures. In order to manage the resources, wealth, and people of these cities, the Greeks began to form a more closely knit political organization and decision-making mechanism. In the 8th century BC, several city-states gradually emerged. Initially, Greek city-states were usually ruled by aristocrats, who owned land and power and held the power to make decisions in the government. Although this ruling model brought relatively stable power to the aristocracy, social contradictions became increasingly intensified over time. The widening gap between the rich and the poor and the aristocracy's monopoly on resources led to widespread social unrest within the city-states. The Greek city-states were not born in a unified way, and each had a different political system and social structure. The history of Athens is closely related to the formation of the Greek city-state. Initially, Athens' political system was an oligarchic system dominated by the aristocracy. The aristocracy controlled most of the wealth and land and dominated the country's decision-making. However, as the internal contradictions of the city-state intensified, especially the class conflict between the poor and the aristocracy, Athens began to see some buds of political reform. In the 7th century BC, the Athenian reformer Draco enacted some written laws. Although these codes were quite harsh, they marked the beginning of the formation of legal and political norms. Then, Solon's reforms further promoted Athens' transition from oligarchy to a more relaxed political system. Solon's reforms abolished debt slavery and gave the general public more political participation rights. Unlike Athens, the city-state of Sparta was completely militarized, emphasizing discipline and combat effectiveness. Sparta's political system was jointly managed by 2 kings and a council of elders, and adopted an extremely strict social system. Sparta's society was highly closed, and the responsibilities of citizens were mainly focused on war and military training. Sparta's education system required citizens to undergo rigorous military training from an early age. The culture and values of the Spartans were deeply rooted in the fighting spirit. Until the 6th century BC, Sparta gradually became one of the most powerful military forces in Greece. In addition to Athens and Sparta, city-states such as Corinth and Argos also began to emerge. Corinth was an important trade center and became wealthy because it controlled the trade route through the Corcyra Strait. The prosperity of Corinth built a strong navy, and the social structure of Corinth was relatively free and dynamic. The Greek city-states differed not only in their political systems but also in their culture, economy, social structure, etc. Although each city-state had its own unique organizational structure, they all had some common characteristics. Autonomy. Each city-state is an independent political unit with its own government, army, courts, etc. They are not controlled by other city-states. Citizen participation. The political system of the Greek city-states emphasized citizen participation. Whether through elections, lotteries, or parliament, citizens of the city-states could influence government decisions. Militarization and defense. Almost all Greek city-states attached great importance to the military, especially Sparta, which regarded war and military training as the core of its society. The birth of the Greek city-states was one of the most important turning points in ancient Greek history. During this period, Greece not only regained its political and cultural vitality, but also laid the foundation for later civilization. The democratic system of Athens, the militarized system of Sparta, and the economic and cultural achievements of other city-states became the source of Western civilization. The diversity and political innovation of Greek city-states provided important references for the world's political system and cultural traditions. The concept of city-states was deeply rooted in people's hearts and became the foundation of political, cultural, and social thinking in later generations.